Good morning, everybody. I'm going to have to tell Chirag to make sure that he finishes at 9:30. Can you guys just raise your hand? Do you guys feel a little bit troubled if Chirag goes over the 9:30 mark because you're not sure whether to stay with him or come over to here? Okay, fine. All right, I'll talk with him about that and hopefully ask him to keep an eye on the clock so that he doesn't get anybody into a spot. We certainly don't want anybody to miss anything. We never know where the value for you will come. Maybe it's the last minute of a call or the first minute of the call or somewhere else, but appreciate that input. Thank you. So today we're going to be talking about what Chirag was just kind of haranguing everyone about a minute ago. It's the words that stuck out for me was get the skill. He just asked everybody, do you feel confident in order to be able to answer all of the typical things that come up? Why should I go with you? What makes you different? That kind of thing. And, there's a skill involved in that kind of a situation. And today we're going to be talking about growth. Where this is the fifth topic of the 10 success principles. So for those of you who started with us earlier, you should have a piece of paper with 4 principles written on it already. I'll remind you what they are, and we'll have the 5th one later today. First one was, people will not be influenced by you unless and until they feel related to by you. Means they have to feel a connection from you before they'll buy from you or do what it is you're asking. Number 2, every touch point with a client should be a contribution, should provide value at that moment in time. That means you need to know where your client is in his life or her life at that particular moment. What are they coming in with? Are they coming in with a fear? Are they coming in with excitement? And you need to meet them there. Third, we talked about habits and routines, and the phrase was, your habits and routines are the building blocks of your success or failure. 4, we talked about organization, and the simple statement was, if you can't find what you're looking for in 30 seconds, you're not organized enough. How many of you have looked back for some data with previous sales that you did or something like that? You couldn't figure it all out. You couldn't tell where everything was. Many of the clients that I work tell me that they have Post-its over here, and they've got some other messages on their phone somewhere, and they've got something inside Business Tracker somewhere. And for all these reasons, they can never find what it is they're looking for quickly enough. So today we're going to be talking about growth. When I was growing up, I was a ski racer. And my family, I grew up in Westchester County, just north of New York. We had a second kind of a winter place up in Vermont. And there's a ton of skiing up there, of course. And there are a lot of ski racers that come out of New York. It's a very active scene for children who are ski racers. And so basically what you do is you go up there every weekend from December 1st to April, and you ski and you race. You're training all the time, and you're going to these races in different places. And so over the course of the year, you might have 2 or 3 coaches working with you. And over the course of many years, you may have worked with many different coaches. It's very similar to other individual sports like gymnastics or tennis or swimming, where you have a very close relationship with your coach, and they're working with you on various aspects of your body condition and how you're moving your body through whatever the sport is that you're doing, and the mental side of the game and all that stuff. The point is, you're always working on something. In skiing, you might be working on how much of an edge you're putting on the ski at a moment in time, and where do you initiate the turn, and where do you end the turn? Or you might be thinking about the line that you follow on a particular course. Should it be a little straighter, but then you risk crashing out? Should it be a little bit more round, which keeps you in the course, but then you risk a slower time? Of course, there's the mental side of the game. When you see one of your rivals skiing very well and putting in a very good run, and you want to beat that person, how do you stay kind of centered and grounded to ski your best? Lots of aspects of skiing that you're thinking about at any time, from your upper body to your lower body to your hand position, all kinds of things. You can imagine the same with golf or any other individual sport. The point is, if a coach comes up to you at any minute and says, what are you working on? You're expected to have an answer. I'm working on my hip position, or I'm working on keeping my upper body quiet, or I'm working on the entrance to the turns, or I'm working on the exit from the turns. All that stuff, you're always focused on one thing or another. And if you've ever played golf, you've probably done the same thing. You're focusing on how do you step up to the ball? Are you a little bit forward? Are you a little bit behind the ball, called addressing the ball? How about your hand movement, your shoulders, your hips, any part of your body? Lots of things to think about, and generally you're thinking about one thing at a given time. That can apply to this business absolutely as well. Because if you're working on your business, you're working on a whole lot of things. But the question is, are you working on yourself? And so we're going to talk about this concept of growth today. And I want you, as you hear about this, think about how does this apply to how you see your own growth and the development of your business over time. So let me pull up a few slides as usual, and let's see where it goes. Okay. So today's success principle, I want to talk about growth. I'll give you the principle later in the slides as usual. Let's talk about this a little bit. First of all, what is growth? When we talk about growth, we're talking about growth here in terms of personal growth. We're not talking about in terms of business growth. The reason that we're talking about personal growth is your business fundamentally is you. There is nothing more important to the success of your business than you. Yes, the market matters. Yes, interest rates matter. Yes, all that stuff matters, but nothing matters nearly as much as you. And so if you want to grow the capability of your business, the best place to think about doing that is to grow the capabilities in yourselves. And so what is growth? Well, a very simple definition of growth: progressive development over time. I want to ask you, especially those of you who've been in the business a while, are you progressively developing? Or if you're really being honest, are you just kind of like taking life as it comes, and this year is more or less the same as last year, and more or less the same as the year before, and more or less the same as the year before? Or are you actively pursuing growth? I'll say one answer to that is yes, because you're here on these calls every week and you're providing yourself stimulus to rethink things, which is really great. On the other hand, are you showing up for the calls and never doing anything with them? And in that case, you may not actually be developing. You may think you're developing. You may tell yourself you're developing. You may even tell other people, oh yeah, I've got these coaching calls I do every week. But are you really developing? Question for all of us. What can you grow or develop? This is one of the most important things to think about, because many of us forget how many different areas there are that are available to us to grow. And here are 4 of them. First, your mindset. You can think about how do you shift, grow, or develop your mindset over time. That is, how are you doing with this thing called positivity? Are you making progress there, or are you just kind of the same person you always were? How about things like your resilience? How about your vision? Are those things actually improving for you, or are they just kind of sitting there as they always have been? You have to be honest with this. Secondly, your skills. This is what Chirag was just talking about: handling objections. Maybe other things like influencing others. How do you influence others? That's what we talk about a lot around here. How do you gain skills to design better marketing, for example? There's lots of skills that we can develop over time. How about knowledge? Obviously, we come to coaching to grow our knowledge, and there's a lot of different things that we can do that in a lot of different areas to do that. You can grow your knowledge of the market, you can grow your knowledge of tech tools, and certainly management and leadership is what we spend a lot of time here doing. How about your personal capabilities? Are you becoming more accountable than you were 5 years ago? And how do you know? Are you more aware of yourself than you were 5 years ago? How do you know? Have you developed the ability to be more creative? How do you know? And so these 4 areas are 4 very different places where you can kind of play this game of growth. And I'd like to ask you to think about just for a minute, in which of these areas do you think you're actually growing or developing? Please put it into the chat. Just put like a number 1 if it's mindset, number 2 if it's skills, number 3 if it's knowledge, and number 4, personal capabilities. Drop it into the chat. Any number where you think you really are growing or developing at this time. Mindset, skills, knowledge, personal capabilities, skills and knowledge. All right, now here's the more difficult question. In which of these areas do you think you're not growing recently? Number 1, 2, 3, or 4. When you look at one of these, you say, you know what? I really haven't done much with that in the last few years. Which one of these areas would be one that you're not really developing yourself? Skills, knowledge, skills. Miriam? Now, Mo, I noticed you just said 1, 2, 3, and 4 for building your skills, but then when I said where you're not building your skills, you put number 2. So that's an interesting contradiction there. I'll come back to you in a minute about that one. I see some more here: mindset, skills, knowledge. personal capabilities. Great. This is the point, everybody. If I were to ask you right now, like my coaches used to ask me every day, what are you working on? Do you have an answer to that? Do you have an active process that you're engaged in right now that's improving you in any of these 4 areas or some other area of yourself? And it's not just like, I'd like to get better, or I'm thinking about it a little bit. Like, what's my active plan? Is it planned and purposeful? Certainly being here is a planned and purposeful way to improve yourself, but do you have a clear target for how you want to improve yourself in all of this? Something to think about. Okay, next. What prevents growth? Well, there's several ways that we kind of like short circuit our own ability to grow. Can you think of any? What is it that you think would get in the way in general of people growing themselves and developing themselves? Well, here are 3 things. One is arrogance. It's kind of a strong word, but basically it's the attitude that, I've already done this for a long time. I already know it all. Basically, I know it all. Secondly, self-satisfaction. I'm already good enough. I've been doing this for years. I'm in the top 5%. I'm in the top 3%. I'm in the top 10%. I'm good enough already. I've seen it all. And 3, of course, is the big one. Do we prioritize growth on the same level as other things in our business? Or are we always focused on profitability, customer service, marketing, organization, something else? Because if growth comes down to like the 25th priority for you, you're never going to get around to it. And in a sense, you've created a limit or a ceiling to how far your business can grow. My personal idea, working with people for the last 15 years as a coach, is it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter whether you went to college or not. We all have so much more that we have to learn, that we could learn if we're interested. And there's some way that that pays itself back to the business. But if we consistently prioritize other things over our own growth, then we're putting a cap without even knowing it on the future success of the business, because we are the business. So what promotes growth? Well, in a sense, the opposite of those 3 things. But here are some things that hopefully are a part of how you bring yourself to the world. Humility. There's always more to learn, as I was just saying. Taking the long view. This is an important one. Chirag has mentioned a couple of times the book by Simon Sinek called The Infinite Game. And the Infinite Games book's premise basically is that business is an infinite game. People come into the business from time to time. People go out of the business from time to time, but the game goes on forever and ever and ever. And for those of us who plan to be in this business for a long time, we can say with some confidence, yeah, I'll probably be doing this 5 years from today or 10 years from today. So the question then is, if I'm going to be here 5 years or 10 years from today, what am I doing to make myself more successful then than I am today? How can I master this game that I'm playing in so that I'm not just playing it at the same level as I am today? I mean, imagine a chess player who plays chess for 30 years, but only learns the game for the first 5 years and never advances past that level of expertise. On the other hand, imagine a chess player who continues to play the game, continues to be a student of the game, continues to learn the game. And 15 years after he started or she started, that player is a different player from the one that was there 10 years earlier or 5 years earlier. And finally, focus. My success starts with me. If you want to invest in the business, you need to invest in yourself because you are the business. But it's not enough to just say, oh yeah, I go to CSC coaching. I get a lot out of it. Is there some kind of a process or a plan that you have that's planned and purposeful, that's getting you someplace that you know you need to get to? And it starts with being clear out of those 4 things before. What's an area that I could use some more learning in, or an area that I don't typically focus on, or maybe an area that I didn't even think about until you mentioned it a couple of slides ago. I'll go back to those again. These are some areas that you can develop. And ask yourself if there's any of these areas that you haven't actively worked on developing yourself with a bona fide practice for several months at a time. There's an opportunity for you today or soon to put a plan into action. Okay, advancing again to where we were. So, how do we grow? It's a very simple 5-step process, folks, but I see most people only engaging in 2 out of these 5 steps. 1, pick something to focus on. Obviously, hey, this is an area myself that I think I could grow better, and if I did grow better, I'd have a better, success in my field. Great, that's good. A lot of people do that. But then people go right to number 3, adopt some kind of a practice, which is, I think I need to learn more about XYZ, so I'll go read a book. That's not bad. Nothing wrong with reading a book. You can get some benefit out of it. But if those are the only 2 steps you take, chances are your ability to gain value out of that planned and purposeful process is limited, because there's 3 more things you could do as part of that process that would make it much more effective for you. So number 1, pick something to focus on. Second, envision what success and mastery looks like. This fits right with what Chirag was just talking about a minute ago with the destination. Remember, he said a destination is like the vision of, I'll be making this much money, I'll be saving this much money, I'll be working this many days, and I'll be taking this many days off. Right? That's a sense of a vision of where the destination is that I want to get to. And so the same thing here. If you say, I want to get better at objections, that's nice. But really what you want to say is, my destination there, or my mastery is, I want to be able to handle with confidence when somebody says to me, tell me what makes you different from other agents. As Chirag said in his call yesterday or Monday, I can't remember which one, he said, when you hear that question, if you really got it down, you're like, I got this, right? Because I know exactly how to handle this. I win. As soon as a client asks me that question, I win because I know that I'm going to ace the answer to that. And so the target or the success or mastery might look like the confidence that you have to be able to answer that kind of a question. 3, adopt the regular development process. That's pretty straightforward. 4, build in support. You may need some kind of a support to help you through this process. And you need to think about that ahead of time. You don't want to find out halfway through the process that you need help and then you don't know what to do. And so that's why you think of ahead of time. Have an accountability partner. Say, hey, Susan, I'm going to start a new practice of what XYZ. Could you help me with it? Sure. What do you need? Well, I'd like you to just check in with me once a week just to make sure that I've done what I said I was going to do. Okay, I can do that. No problem. Perfect. Accountability partner. Or maybe there's some tools and apps. If you want to lose weight or you want to count calories or you want to do something else in your business, there's tons of tools and apps out there that you might be able to leverage depending on what it is you want to learn. And then 5, this is another one where most people stumble. Stick with it for the appropriate time and then assess progress. We don't usually do this enough. So many of us are so targeted to the here and now that we start something last week, and if we don't see results within a week, we move on to the next best thing. It's awful. We're killing our business. Every potential value of growth comes through a certain movement. That is, you were started here and you moved to here. And only because you moved to here do you realize or experience the value of what you did. And if you only start there and then abandon it halfway, you get nowhere. Losing weight's a good example. You can say, I want to lose 10 pounds. I'm going to start going to the gym. You go to the gym 3 days and you say, this is too hard. I give up. Of course, you'll never lose those 10 pounds. You won't even lose 1. All you have to do is stick with it. So we need to understand also that when we create a planned and purposeful process, we have to think about what's the appropriate amount of time that I need to do this to extract the value out of the process. And if we're willing to commit to it, great, go for it. If not, that's okay too, as Chirag was saying on the next call. Create a different process or focus on something else. If you can do these 5 things, you're almost guaranteed to gain as much value out of the learning process as you can. And it doesn't have to be big and complex and fancy. It could be quite simple. But if all these 5 things are in there, chances are you succeed. Most of us struggle because we only pick number 1 and we pick number 3. All right, so putting this into action. Oh, here's the principle. Sorry, I forgot about that. So here's the principle, folks. This is what you should write down in your paper. If you're not growing, you're not standing still, you're falling behind others because other people are growing. Other people are choosing to invest in themselves right now. And I know you're investing in your business because you're coming to Chirag Shah Coaching and you're doing 6 a.m.ers or whatever else you do. That's fantastic. It's great. But remember, the center of your business is you. And if you are not growing and learning, then your business is not growing and learning, at least from a certain point of view. If you're not growing, you're not staying still, you're falling behind the others who are. For those of you who see yourselves as sharks and killers and you're going to go out there and take over the world, the way you take over the world is to push yourself to learn as far as you can, as fast as you can, because that's a competitive advantage. Other people are going to be willing to do it for fewer hours than you, or not as kind of clearly as you, or not as in a dedicated way as you. And over time, they'll lose. But by the same token, if you're not making the effort, you're not going to be able to achieve all of the goals that you could otherwise. All right, so taking action this week, very easy. See the previous page with the 5 steps I just delineated a minute ago, and then stick with it. You need to stick with it. It's not difficult to stick with it. We make choices every day to not stick with it. And we say, unfortunately, we lie to ourselves and say, well, the business is so busy and there's so many things happening. And I've got this problem with this client, a problem with that client, some other thing going on. We take ourselves out of the process that we previously told ourselves was so important for our success. And so either you lied to yourself before, or you're sabotaging your own success right now. Okay, let's bring this down. Let me ask a couple questions. Okay, so question, I'm really curious, what resonates for you in all of that? How does this relate to how you're leading yourselves in either a good way or more especially in a way that's not ideal for the success of your business? Let me hear from a couple of you. What resonates for you in this discussion? Just raise your hand and we'll bring it off mute. Melissa, please.
So one of my team members said they weren't interested in coaching because they've been in the business 15 years, they know everything, and it didn't add value to them. And my thought was, well, I think that's a scary thought because we're always learning, but more so as a leader, how could I have spoken better to help understand that we all need to learn, and it's a privilege to have this coaching. And I feel a bit like sad about it, that I didn't have the right languaging.
Yep. Well, it is too bad, when somebody says, I know it all, first of all, that's not true. I haven't met anybody yet who really does know it all. There's lots of people on the planet who think we know it all, but one thing about maturity, if you've been around for a few years, like I have, you come to see that you don't know everything in the world, that there's a lot of things in the world you don't understand, right? People who are young tend to think they know it all. People who are older tend to realize that maybe they don't know a lot of things. And it's too bad if somebody feels like they've been doing it so long that there's nothing else that they can learn.
You've talked about real value versus perceived value.
Yeah.
And so to me, I think this is the best thing known to mankind. I think being with this group is a privilege from the other agents and also from learning from all of your coaches. And it was such an antithesis of the way I think.
Yeah. Well, this is what's wonderful about doing it together as a group. Working with a coach one-on-one has a lot of value, but it's only in one direction. Working with a group gives you the added benefit of having 100 other voices that can contribute to something to you at any time. When somebody drops a title of a book that they read into the chat, or they say, hey, I'll partner with you in an accountability group, or they say, this is how I handle my marketing. If that's new and different for you, that's a contribution that you'd never get otherwise. And so it's one of the reasons why we encourage everybody to dive into the community as much as you can, because everybody here is really knowledgeable. Everybody here is really dedicated. Everybody here is really experienced, or almost everybody. And there's always more that we can learn. By the way, I will pull up the slide deck just for a moment here so that I could share that for just a moment. But let's continue. So who else has something that resonates for you in this conversation, especially? Can't see any hands. Okay, Mo, please. Can you come off mute? You're muted again. You came off and then back on again. Can we unmute Mo? There we go.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. So yeah, this is really the segment that never thought about it, how to grow. You're just to the point. I'm doing number 1 and number 3 right now. I mean, I'm working on it for past few months, but the rest of it, even I never thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
Envision. I never thought about envisioning. I mean, how does it look like? All right. Or the support. No, support is me. I need somebody else involved. I mean, even an app or a book that I write my progress and see if I'm matching. And really, the hardest is number 5. Because it's a day goes and you don't see the progress really. In a week, you don't see a progress. I mean, because it's like a muddy water that little by little gets clear. So first week or even first month. So it's a long-term things that I'm not patient, or most of us are not patient people. And so that's my issues.
Thank you, Mo. You know, when we talk about growing ourselves, guess what, folks? We could grow our patience. Do you think
Yes.
it's impossible to ever shift how patient you are in your life? I don't think so. I think it's absolutely
Yes.
possible.
Yes.
And when we talk about our personal capabilities, I mentioned the words like resilience and things like that. Absolutely, patience is one of them. And if one of the things that's limiting our business is the fact that we can never stick with anything for more than 10 minutes or 20 minutes, you know, metaphorically speaking, then maybe that's something we need to work on. Maybe we should find out who are the most patient people in the world, and we should go talk with them and find out, how do you develop, or how do you have such great patience, and how does it contribute to your life? Thank you, Mo. Let's hear from Rob. Rob, can you come off mute, please?
I think one of the biggest challenges is focusing for long enough. I tend to jump from one task to the other, whether it's, let's say, social media or print marketing or
Yep.
calling, and there's no consistency. There's not enough consistency to see real positive results.
Yep. Big challenge for most of us. This is why, you know, there's probably 100 million Americans who would like to lose weight. And of those 100 million Americans, they know they're supposed to eat right. They know they're supposed to exercise. They know they're supposed to get good rest. But something breaks down between the desire and the practice, right? And maybe it's that they cheat on the diet a little bit, or maybe they don't exercise as much as they ought to because it's raining or it's cold or whatever. All perfectly good reasons. But you're pointing out something that's very common here. And, you know, we need to maybe work on that, Rob. That's not just you, but for all of us, is if I have problem focusing on something and I tend to go back and forth to social media, that's not like rocket science. It's like, turn the freaking phone off, right? It's like, say to yourself, I'm not going to touch my phone for the next 30 minutes or 60 minutes, or maybe 10 minutes, if that's where you are, to say, I'm going to turn that phone off for 10 minutes. I'm going to focus on something else. You know, many simple things you can do. One is, don't block your calendar in anything less than 30-minute increments. Like whatever you're going to work on, block 30 minutes for it, assuming it takes 30 minutes at least to do it. And resist the urge to go back and forth and back and forth, back and forth. Just say, for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to do whatever this task is, focus on that only. And after that, let's say I'll check my social media. That's one technique. Another technique is set ahead of time what times during the day you're going to be checking stuff. Most of us, most of the time, we can get by checking our messages once in the morning, once midday, once in the afternoon, or something close to that. And you could set time and build it right into your calendar. You could put, you know, phone time, 9:30 to 10:30, phone time, 12:30 to 1, phone time, 3 to 3:30, and then check again at night before you go to bed, whatever, right? We're all worried about FOMO, but the reality is there is not a crisis every single day in our business. There is not. Somehow the sun comes up tomorrow, the world goes on, our business goes on. And if you're in an infinite game, what you do in the next 5 minutes is not crucial to your success 5 years down the road. And so if we can do some simple techniques like that, then maybe it's helpful. Maybe you do it as a part of an accountability, like you call up Martha Knapp or somebody else, say, hey, Martha, you struggling with the SM stuff like me? Yeah, okay, great. So I'll tell you what, let's both promise to do our check our phones from 9:30 to 10 in the morning. In fact, I'll Zoom you then and we'll do it together. We'll just put ourselves on mute. We'll check whatever we need to do. We'll kind of say hello to each other. And then at 10 o'clock, we turn it off. See you again at 12:30, right? So many different ways that you could address things like this. And in a sense, the success for the potential of our business in the future is finding those creative ways for me or you or any of us to be successful. I'll give you a creative example. One of the clients I worked with, and this is the last thing I'll say today. One of the clients I worked with was a team of leaders at a corporation. And they had a problem where they kept talking about an issue long after it was really like settled and decided. They had like eight or nine of them around the table, and they would talk about an issue. They'd go through the options, they'd figure it out. But then somebody would add something else, somebody would add something else, but it's not really valuable. And they're kind of like beating a dead horse. So you know what they did? They ended up actually, somebody brought in a toy horse, a plastic horse, and they put the toy horse in the center of the conference table. And they would stand it up on its feet and they would start talking about an issue. And they made a rule that whenever anybody concluded that they were done talking about the issue and now they were just beating a dead horse, that person would stand up and knock the horse over. And then everybody would stop talking about that topic and they move on to the next one. A crazy, crazy idea that turned out to be the right one for them. And so when Chirag and I and other coaches are throwing out hundreds of different ways of doing these things, yeah, those are all ways that have been successful for others. If they don't work for you, you need to be creative and find out something else that does. So thank you, everybody, for thinking about growth today. I hope that you're going to be working on something. And don't be surprised if I come up to you someday at retreat or somewhere else and say, hey, Wayne, nice to see you. What are you working on? I hope you'll have an answer. Have a great day, everybody, and a great week. Get out there and make the contribution only you can make. We'll see you soon.